Hello everyone, and welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we're going to share a story about the struggle against family manipulation, how to deal with toxic relatives, and reclaiming control over your own life. Today's story will take you through a series of unexpected twists. The surprise lies in the way the couple turned a sabotage plot to their advantage, causing the manipulators to end up self-destructing instead of achieving their goals. If you find this story interesting and full of meaningful lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more valuable insights. During my honeymoon, a time when most people look forward to relaxing and enjoying a few cocktails at a resort, I chose a different path. I sat down and typed out this long, emotional story. A wave of relief washed over me as I finally could share everything, as if I were releasing a long-held burden from the past. What made me even happier was that my husband, despite being engrossed in several cocktails, was excited about the story in a humorous and warm way. Actually, this story was posted on an alternate account because I don't have a Reddit account, and my husband, a die-hard fan of the platform, insisted he didn't want these things linked to his main account. And you might wonder, why wouldn't a Reddit enthusiast like him be the one to write this story? He simply laughed and said, "Because this is my family, so I deserve to share this story, all while standing by my side, silently supporting me from behind." In doing so, we transformed our painful memories into a candid journey filled with trust and love. First of all, I want to share some important background to explain why the actions and reactions in this story went to such extremes. I apologize for the length of this story, but I believe the details will help you fully understand all the pain and injustice I experienced. Ever since I was old enough to understand the world, my parents have always shown love and favoritism toward my older sister. This wasn't done in any subtle or refined manner, it was blatant and undeniable favoritism. Whenever my sister accused me of something, my parents immediately believed her and punished me harshly. Conversely, if I tried to speak the truth or accuse her, they wouldn't believe me at all. Even when there was irrefutable evidence, they still opted for milder punishments for her, while I had to endure severe reprimands and harsh penalties. This favoritism created an unjust family environment, making me always feel wronged and overpowered. From my childhood onward, I constantly faced clear favoritism from my parents. A prime example was my birthdays. My birthday cake always had to be the flavor my sister loved, even though I really didn't like that type of cake. Meanwhile, her cake never needed any adjustments, and my parents always denied that they even knew my true preferences. And it didn't stop there. On every special occasion, they would always get a little extra for her and choose the venues and activities according to her wishes, even when the event was meant just for me. Through all of this, I clearly felt that, in my parents' eyes, everything belonged only to her, and I was simply forgotten in the shadow of their unconditional favoritism. Since I was little, my sister was pampered to the point where she never had to face any difficulties, and that very treatment fostered in her a selfish and detached attitude. In the beginning, she simply ignored me, showing no concern or affection. However, as the family injustices became increasingly apparent, I gradually became the target of all her anger, as a sacrifice onto which she could dump her frustrations and disappointments. As we entered our teenage years, our already cold relationship became even more strained and toxic, marking a painful turning point in my family life that I had to endure every day. Although I can't say for certain what exactly caused or resulted from everything, one thing is undeniable: my sister gradually became isolated, ended up with no friends, and her behavior grew increasingly negative. I wondered whether her friends had simply moved away, or if they just refused to associate with someone they found too difficult. In truth, I never really had the chance to truly understand her, because we were never close. What's even more upsetting is that while my parents were always eager to boast about my sister's achievements, they never mentioned any of her issues or flaws. On the contrary, every single one of my shortcomings was exaggerated and used as a joke. Through our shared classes at school, I gradually realized that my sister no longer socialized with anyone, a clear sign that isolation had crept into her life. This only confirmed that, under the weight of favoritism and injustice within the family, she had gradually lost her way and her connection with friends. Anyway, my sister remained lonely without friends, while I used to be loved and enjoyed a pretty active social life. Perhaps because I was well liked by others, my sister eventually took notice and changed her attitude. I was no longer just an occasional target of bullying, I had become the enemy she was determined to take down at all costs. And it didn't stop there. She ramped up her accusations against me, spreading blame among my friends in an effort to isolate me and undermine my social connections. Things got even worse when my parents, with their blatant favoritism, started forbidding me from interacting with anyone. They justified it by claiming that my friends were not good people according to my sister, or that I was trying to distance myself from the family, something they considered contrary to tradition and far removed from my sister's ideal of enjoying family time. In this way, the injustice pushed me further into isolation, and I gradually lost the close relationships that I once took pride in. It was my extended family, on my mother's side, that saved me from complete isolation. Most of my relatives live in the same town, and I always felt very close to my cousins, even though there was an age gap between us. I remember one family gathering when everyone invited me to go out. I can't even recall the destination clearly anymore. I sadly replied that I wasn't allowed to go out. When they asked why, the innocent child in me, not yet knowing how to keep a secret, bluntly said, "Because I'm not allowed to have friends, since my sister doesn't have any." Those words revealed a twisted family rule. My opportunity to make friends was forbidden simply because of my sister's loneliness. This made the sorrow and injustice within my immediate family all the more evident, while my extended family became the only comforting haven that made me feel less alone. That rumor quickly reached the ears of the adults, and they didn't hesitate to criticize and tear into my parents for their unfairness. Immediately afterward, I was scolded for supposedly lying and was grounded for a whole month, even though, in truth, I had nowhere else to go. However, after that period, my parents granted me a little bit of freedom, which made me feel somewhat compensated for all the past troubles. At that moment, my sister decided to transfer schools. I guess that when the whole family found out she didn't have any friends, that humiliation drove her to request a transfer to avoid being looked down upon. My parents immediately complied, even though the new school was not only farther away but also more expensive. In her new environment, she was lucky enough to make new friends, but the sad part was that she never went back to her old habit of simply ignoring me. It was as if, after experiencing the power of being able to completely destroy me, coupled with her anger that I had the nerve to tell the family that she didn't have any friends, she decided never to let me have peace again. My life continued to be full of hardships and misery. My sister's friends would often come over to the house and cause trouble, teasing me to such an extent that my parents dismissed it as light teasing, a feeble excuse for serious bullying. Fearing that I might be misunderstood or accused of stealing, as per my sister's allegations, I never dared invite any friends over, even though I knew that the way my parents welcomed them always turned everything into chaos. Meanwhile, I found some solace in the close bonds I shared with my cousins, the ones my parents were too afraid to treat as poorly as they treated me. That relationship became the only support that helped me get through those lonely and painful years at home. Then, I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home at all, but my parents insisted. And as I feared, my sister ended up flirting with him. During that time, they actually kept in touch outside of any text messages. We ensured this by arranging that whenever my sister attempted to text my husband, I would reply on her behalf. This only reinforced my husband's claim that I was controlling and overly anxious. As a result, they believed him and never dared leave anything in writing. And perhaps some people don't like it when their partner goes around bad-mouthing them to the family. But I'm so meek that being painted as a controlling and dangerous person is laughably absurd, and I even egged my husband on to keep doing it. Maybe I have a perverse sense of humor, haha. Oh, and my sister even tried to flirt with my husband, but he appeared hesitant. Furthermore, to really convince them that he was on their side, my husband pretended to tell them things I knew nothing about. But he never mentioned that we had actually hired security. Looking back, it's truly laughable. We, a couple who had seriously considered having a simple courthouse wedding to save money for our honeymoon, ended up deciding on an extravagant, expensive wedding that, surprisingly, cost almost nothing. We called it compensation for emotional distress from our parents, a subtle form of revenge for all those years of suffering. According to my husband, yes, he just confirmed that I was absolutely right. Ha! He seemed to enjoy the game of deceiving my parents more than obsessing over planning the wedding. I never imagined I'd witness a man so radiant and overjoyed that he spent the entire Saturday driving around and discussing every detail of the wedding with his in-laws. And yet, that's exactly what happened, and it proved that sometimes, taking revenge by turning tense moments into joy is truly the best way to overcome the past. Finally, the big day arrived. According to the intricate plan that my parents, my sister, and my husband had devised, they decided to wait until all the guests were seated. Since, as usual, the bride tends to appear late, they planned for my sister to show up exactly at that moment, a way to prevent me from catching sight of and interfering with the plan. And so, my sister stepped onto the ceremony floor, while I was completely helpless to realize the scheme until it was too late. As for my wedding dress, we had secretly kept some leftover fabric from the alterations. My husband took that fabric to my parents' house, where my sister still lived, displaying it as evidence that he had ruined the dress. Then he hurriedly said that he had to get back to me because I was extremely angry and he needed to calm me down, arranging to meet my parents at the wedding. In doing so, everything in the plan went off without a hitch, leaving me no chance to change the course of that day. Finally, the big day had arrived. We had arranged an elaborate plan to prevent my sister from appearing at the wedding. At first, we carefully concealed the real security team. When the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman holding the guest list, checking names, showing no sign of any actual security. Only when my parents had settled into their seats did the real security team, a man who looked like a professional bodyguard, appear. We instructed him that my sister was not allowed to enter and promised him a handsome bonus if he didn't reveal that it was our order. Shortly afterward, when my parents received a text message saying that my sister would arrive in less than 5 minutes, my father immediately stood up and signaled for everyone to begin. The bridesmaids, who had been clearly instructed beforehand, obeyed the order without question. In an orderly fashion, they entered one by one and took their seats, while my father stood right at the door as if waiting for me to appear. In this way, our plan was executed perfectly, leaving my sister with no opportunity to disrupt the order of the big day. While preparing for the wedding, I received a text message from one of my husband's friends, not an official member of the bridesmaid team, reminding me to be ready. This message was meant to ensure that my husband and the bridesmaids wouldn't take out their phones to text, which might reveal our secret plan. That friend, who was my husband's close buddy and always ready to create drama, wholeheartedly helped out without worrying that he wasn't officially part of the bridesmaids. Then, once my father had settled into his seat, the wedding music started, the doors opened, and I gracefully walked into the ceremony. My father looked utterly stunned when he saw me. He tried to glance behind me, but from his position he couldn't see the entrance to the hall, so he had absolutely no idea what was happening with my sister. Suddenly, his phone rang. When I looked at the screen, my sister's name appeared. He muttered, "There's trouble," and hurriedly left me standing as he ran off, leaving the atmosphere at the ceremony even more chaotic and full of surprises. In the midst of the chaos, everyone around was stunned, murmuring and whispering about what was happening. Suddenly, a friend, who wasn't one of the bridesmaids, shouted, "What's going on here?" I glanced around, trying to control my emotions, and pretended to cry, saying, "He said, it shouldn't be you." Of course, he never actually said that. My husband and I had agreed that if he ever dared to leave me, I would exclaim those words to make him look as bad as possible. And the tears? I wish I could say they were just overacting, but they were truly streaming down. Even though I had anticipated this situation, a part of me never thought that my father could abandon me at that moment. I had hoped it was just a cruel joke, but now I'm not so sure. I've been hurt, and still am, so I really tried not to let the tears fall. Immediately afterward, my friend shouted loudly, "What does he mean by saying it shouldn't be you?" hoping as many people as possible would hear her. She declared, "I'm going to go check out what's happening," and dashed off. Our plan was for her to stir up a commotion along with the security team to prevent my father from coming back to shut down the ceremony. Before long, my mother also left the scene. Meanwhile, my father-in-law hurried over and grabbed my hand, he had been warned in advance that intervention might be needed. Seeing him rush over with a worried look, I smiled faintly, feeling comforted amidst the chaos of this momentous day. I walked down the aisle amid the confused murmurs of the guests, some even rose from their seats to see what was going on. But as soon as I reached my husband, the atmosphere suddenly became calm and warm. He teased that my pained face was so genuine it deserved an Oscar, and then promised, "Don't worry, I'll take care of those troublemakers," punctuating his words with a light laugh, haha. In the end, we got married without any further obstacles. My parents didn't dare come back. I noticed that many people came and went throughout the reception, but no one dared to speak to me. Suddenly, someone whispered in my husband's ear, causing him to hastily leave. When he returned, his face was etched with a terrible anger, but then he whispered that he needed to find a place to hide before he lost control and burst into giggles. Clearly, our plan had succeeded. After the ceremony, we went back to the hotel to rest before setting off to enjoy our honeymoon. Notably, although my parents offered to pay for the plane tickets, we declined for fear that they might cancel the tickets or meddle further, a risk we were simply not willing to take. Since that incident, all three of them have continuously tried to contact me, but I have steadfastly refused to take any calls because my husband emphasized the need to preserve the evidence. That decision was truly wise, for in the end, my younger sister also texted me. I won't repeat the entire contents of her message because it was too insane and irrational, but the key point was that she blamed me for her own humiliation. She accused my husband of being two-faced, a man who had deceived them for months, a claim he even joked about printing and hanging on our wall, haha, and asserted that I would be betrayed by him. She even implied that he had cheated on me with her. My husband carefully took my phone and captured all the evidence, from the call logs, texts from my younger sister, to the coercive messages from my parents demanding that I answer the phone. He sent all these images into the family group chat. Not stopping there, he also shared the messages my parents had sent him, in which they didn't hesitate to curse and threaten him. Yet he remained calm, stating that those words were nothing but delusions and affirming that he had never agreed with their accusations. In fact, he even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. Afterward, he wrote an urgent message in the group chat, pleading for the family to intervene because I was being continuously harassed by them. He begged everyone to help prevent them from sabotaging our honeymoon, a final act of revenge after they had failed to ruin our wedding. To conclude his message, he also requested that no one reveal our location, to prevent my parents from sending my sister over and then concocting a story that he had agreed to pretend to sleep with her in the honeymoon suite. LOL. My family even vowed that they would handle this matter. Since that incident, our lives have become much more stable. My husband, though a bit disappointed that my younger sister didn't dare stand up against the orders, thus denying him the chance to vent his anger and scold the entire family, we remain determined to see whether this enforced silence will last. Although I had long yearned for a warm, loving family on my wedding day, at least this time they completely failed to sabotage my important event, and I was even able to get my revenge. This story clearly demonstrates that those who intend to manipulate and control others will ultimately bring about their own downfall. Thanks to the solidarity between my husband and me, we turned their sabotage into an opportunity to expose our family's true nature, while reclaiming control over our lives and happiness. Even though I come from a family that never treated me fairly, I was fortunate enough to find a life partner willing to protect and fight for me, helping me overcome past hurts and open a new, hopeful chapter in my life. You've done very well not only by protecting your own happiness but by turning the tables on those who always try to manipulate and belittle you. However, as sweet as this victory is, the most important thing is to look toward a future unburdened by painful pasts. Continue to set clear boundaries with toxic family members and focus on building a happy life with your loving spouse. This story is an important reminder: you are not obligated to endure a toxic family relationship just because they're your relatives. Sometimes, true kinship doesn't come from blood, but from those who truly love and respect you. Learn to protect yourself, set healthy boundaries, and choose to be with those who bring you peace instead of those who only know how to belittle and manipulate you. Happiness isn't determined by others, it lies in your hands. The lesson from this story is, stand up to protect yourself from manipulation and injustice. Sometimes, confronting the bad guys head-on isn't the only way to win. Wisdom, patience, and careful planning can help you turn an unfavorable situation into an advantage. Most importantly, family isn't just those related by blood, but those who truly love and support you unconditionally.